The original Lochcatran Adelphi distillery was built in Glasgow's Gorbals district in 1825 and operated until its final malt distillation in 1907. The name Adelphi remained dormant until 1993, when it was resurrected as the independent bottler we know today by the great-grandson of the original distillery's owner.
We bought the company in January 2004, and at that point it was going to be very simple, selling casks of very high-quality whisky to an established marketplace that was going to be established quite rapidly. The whisky market was getting tighter and tighter, and our ability to get good quality whisky and turn it over quickly faded. So it became clear that we had everything in place. We had terrific staff, we had enthusiasm, we'd built an incredibly good market share, but we needed volume, and therefore the ownership of a distillery was paramount in the next stage of our development.
The building of a distillery would take Adelphi back to its roots. The next step was to undertake a feasibility study and look at potential locations.
This was not something that we were able to rush. This a great deal of time in terms of planning, checking our numbers, checking that we got everything right, and then finding the right site for the distillery was also something which was very complicated.
The Ardnamurchan distillery is located at Glenbeg, on the southern edge of the Ardnamurchan Peninsula. Ardnamurchan is an area of outstanding natural beauty and is among the most remote and unspoiled parts of the UK mainland.
We have two reasons for choosing Ardnamurchan. One is, of course, some of it is under the ownership of the same people as Adelphi. But secondly, it is due to its remoteness, it is already fairly sustainable in the way it looks at heating and its water provision. The fact that we could find the best quality water, and ironically, even though it is Ardnamurchan and it's always wet, having enough water, we had to look for a river that had holding lochs above it so that the quantity was consistent year round. When we were putting the brief together, it was very important for us that we could fit in with our surroundings in the West Coast. It had to fit into the local architecture, and while we can use modern building materials, steel frame, etc., it had to look like it was meant to be there. And all this in quite a compact space, which was also very important for our neighbours. The wood chip facility that is already existing in Ardnamurchan has allowed us to design the first 100% wood chip powered biomass boiler for Scotch whisky distilling. The engineering behind that is incredibly complex, but it is something which we are absolutely 100% behind. This distillery concept will allow us to take the full circle of Scottish product. So we will be growing all our own barley in Scotland. Certainly for the first few years, we would like to concentrate that to the farm where we do all our bottling currently in West Fife. That barley will then travel up to Ardnamurchan to be malted in our own maltings. The whole process allows us to produce the whisky on site, but also to use the draff from the mash tun to feed the beasts of Ardnamurchan, the deer, the cows, even the sheep. And we can use the pot ale to fertilise the fields where necessary. So this full circle is incredibly important to the brand and something that we would like to promote and hopefully encourage other distilleries to do.
The construction of the distillery took place between February 2013 and June 2014. The build involved engineers, technicians, and skilled workers from across the UK and beyond.
The remoteness of Ardnamurchan presented us with unique challenges, both for the equipment delivery and for the contractors involved in the build. Access to the peninsula involves a short ferry crossing and negotiating single-track roads. These roads must be some of the most tortuous and narrow and yet spectacular roads anywhere in Scotland. we discovered that the narrowest point of the single track road, which leads up to the distillery, was just 3.3 metres wide. And as funny as it may seem now, our distillery is designed to that maximum width. So the largest piece of equipment in the distillery, which is the 2-ton mash, is no wider than 3.3 metres. We've had some narrow bridges following the convoy that brought the stills in, and watching the skill of the lorry driver was quite incredible.
The construction team survived the weather, the remote location and the midges to complete on schedule and allowed production to begin in June 2014.
You start with the style of whisky and then you work backwards to try and establish how you're going to get that style.
We have 4 wooden washbacks and 3 stainless steel. The wooden washbacks are unique to us because they're made of oak. We're the only distillery in Scotland to use oak washbacks. They're going to have a very long life. The Portuguese coopers who installed them for us expect them to outlast the distillery building. We have a fairly long fermentation time. This, combined with the clarity of the wort and a specific type of yeast that we use, gives us the fruity characteristics in the wash that we're looking for.
The Ardnamurchan distillery will produce 2 distinct styles of single malt whisky, one peated and one unpeated, matured in ex-bourbon and ex-sherry casks.
We are producing both an unpeated and a peated style of spirit. In both cases we get lovely fruitiness, a mouth-filling texture and a unique honey peppery character. We also want the spirit to marry well with the wood of the very carefully selected casks which we get from America and Spain.
The west coast of Scotland is one of the best places, if not the best place in the whole world for long-term maturation. And the reason for this is that the temperature and the humidity is very stable. And this is good for 2 reasons. Firstly, as the alcohol drops, certainly below about 50, we tend to see quite a remarkable change in the character of the whisky. It becomes much more fruity, and being a natural process, this is the best way of doing it.
We built a very traditional dunnage warehouse here on site. It's actually split into separate floors. On the ground level, all casks are stored on a soil floor, and these are perfect conditions for long-term maturation. On the upper level, the casks are stored on a concrete floor. The temperature is higher, which creates a dry atmosphere, which gives us a faster maturation. A good cask policy is very important, and we invest heavily in the best wood available. We're sourcing barrels from Kentucky and Tennessee, and also ex-sherry casks from Spain. The American barrels give us flavors such as vanilla, coconut, creme brulee, while the ex-sherry casks give us fruity notes, spiciness, and a good tannin structure.
We're going to be very important within the community, and that's something we take very seriously. But we do hope to provide a significant number of good, well-paid, long-term jobs, which I think everybody should warmly embrace.
The new distillery can only strengthen the identity that Ardnamurchan has already. There'll be a positive knock-on effect for all the businesses around Ardnamurchan, which has been getting stronger over the last few years. We're going to get people that would have never come to Ardnamurchan, so they're experiencing Ardnamurchan for the first time, and hopefully they'll continue to return in the future.
It's quite a responsibility that we've handed ourselves, and there's a great deal of hard work and commitment needed to make sure this turns out to be successful for ourselves and everybody involved. But I'm very confident we can do that.
Just the other day, I found my original single sheet of A4 notes from the meeting when we conceived our distillery in 2007 at Glenborodale Castle. And amazingly, as I was reading through, we have stuck to every single point as best we could. And it wasn't because these were constantly in front of us. It was because we felt very strongly about each of them.
Adelphi's Ardnamurchan distillery aims to become one of the foremost producers of quality Scotch malt whisky by blending traditional methods with environmentally responsible techniques.